Now let's go to another player that I'm really high on, and I'm not sure if I'm right about this, Gabe. You know more about this than me, but let's talk about Dymere Miller. I mean, I was impressed with him this year. I think this guy's big. I think he's fast, and I think he's smart, and I think he can be placed on an NFL team, particularly in third down context where he could, really help a team. What do you think?
So I agree with you. I don't think his ceiling is Pro Bowl or star, but I think his ceiling to me is actually sort of like a Scotty Miller kind of guy, where he's somewhere between wide receiver 3 and wide receiver 4 on a really good team. Wide receiver 3 on a bad team, wide receiver 4 on a great team, but in the middle for a good team. So he's a wide receiver, 5'11", 184, out of Coatesville High School in Pennsylvania. 2023 Walter Payton Award finalist, 4 amazing years at Monmouth, 1 really solid year at Rutgers, 16 touchdowns between 2022 and 2023. He had 7 with us in 24. He had a career high 1,295 receiving yards in 2023. So this is where it gets a little dicey. His peak, right? He peaked at number 229 prospect, according to NFL MarkDraftDatabase.com in January 2025. But right now he ranks 405 as a prospect, which that would be undrafted. But 229, I believe, is, if I'm doing my math correctly, that might sneak in at late round 7. I'm not good at doing that division off the top of my head, but so you see this guy, he's got the peak of being drafted. Currently, he's not projected, so he should get some scouts to at least pick him up as an undrafted free agent. With that chance, the only thing is, he had his first shot at being on a real football team, no offense to Monmouth, last year. And, he had a great year, but it wasn't up to the same standard. There was a drop-off. So it's a little dicey when it comes to his production. The 4 years at Monmouth, how do you even equate that to translating into something like the NFL?
Yeah, well, I'm going to tell you what I think about this. And this is the weird thing about receivers. One thing that's always amazed me about receivers is that sometimes receivers that you wouldn't expect to be talented in the NFL come out of nowhere and become stars. And, you said you were a New York Jets fan. When you said that, I wasn't sure if you were joking or not. But if you're serious.
They are a joke.
Oh, okay. Well, let's assume you are a Jets fan. I'm a Giants fan, so we're pretty much worse off than you guys are. Now, when I think of Wayne Corbett, here's what I see. I see someone who's 5'10", 188 pounds, who ran a 4.53 40.
Yeah.
When I see Dymere Miller, I see 5'11", 184 pounds, running a 4.36 40. So there's a limitation to just looking at the tail of the tape, the height, the weight, the speed. And in this case, he has the speed, may not have the height, but I think what makes great receivers is intelligence and intangibles, the ability to read a defense, to see the holes, and to be thrown open. And I think we're going a little bit too low on Dymere Miller. Remember, these NFL GMs are not the brightest people in the bunch. They drafted Anthony Richardson in the first round, for God's sake. Okay? They're often seduced by the hard numbers rather than looking at the intangibles. I think Dymere Miller has them. I think he's going to be a steal for a team for a low price, and he's going to have a big impact.
So I would have been fooled with Anthony Richardson too. I thought he was the best quarterback in that class. But
he's a bum.
When it comes to Miller, I'm just going off of the analytics, and that seems to be what's more relied on nowadays than ever because, with the advancements in AI and data, you see sort of this correlation to players, unfortunately, just being numbers to a GM, to an owner. And when you go based on the numbers, he's not getting drafted. But when you go off the heart, the scouts see heart when they show up to a place that they don't see when they're looking at a guy's numbers. Someone will give this guy a practice squad contract. Now, will he make a roster? I don't know. But I do see the potential that he could be sort of a player that's an impact on a good team if he's given a chance. Um, it just sort of seems like, he plateaued a little bit last season, and he was a
Right.
senior, a fifth-year senior, so he really should have been like, competing for, Big Ten receiver of the year type of player, but that's just my opinion.
Well, here's the thing, and I could be wrong, but we often think that because someone is an NFL GM, they must be smart. They must be experts. They must know things that we don't know. It's absolutely not true. Having worked with people who are in similar positions, I can tell you it's shocking to see what little they often do know. And that's why they rely on analytics, because they're incapable of actually assessing a human being.
Yeah.
Analytics is one of those things that's really ruined managing in professional baseball. We look at a pitcher in the seventh inning who's throwing 98 miles an hour and strikes out the first two batters. Say he's a left-handed pitcher. But then the manager takes him out when the next batter comes up because it's lefty on lefty, and the percentage of getting him out is only 68%. Well, if you look at the damn game, the guy's throwing 98 miles an hour. Let them play. Analytics is actually a substitute for analysis. And analysis is what separates the great GMs from the average GMs. So if you're looking at it purely on an analytics basis, sure, you might be right. If you're looking at it on a more comprehensive basis, I think his future is brighter than people may think.
Unfortunately, based on the analytics, he's not getting drafted. That's what I'm saying. It's after the draft, as an undrafted free agent, will he get a practice squad shot? And I think the answer is yes.
Gabe, how many times have you seen in the NFL some moron head coach who's trailing another team go for two after a touchdown because the numbers on the little sheet say that he should?
And it hardly works out too. Like, I've noticed that. I mean, it might just be like a recency bias thing, but when people are going for two when they're down one, it doesn't work out that much. And you know why? It's because they get the freaking jitters.
Yes, and what they don't realize about analytics is the same thing what people don't realize about economics. It's all speculative. It's all based on projections rather than certainty. For Christ's sake, if you score a touchdown and you're down, don't go for the 2-point conversion because you think, well, if they don't score and we get a field goal, they come back, they get a touchdown, then we get a touchdown and kick the extra point, we'll win by one. It's based on too many contingencies. Take all the points you can get. And the fact that the 2-point conversion has shown to be a failure in the NFL based on analytics shows the broader problem with analytics itself.
And you know why they go for it at the end of the game? It's because everyone wants to go home and they don't want to go to overtime. They just want to either win or lose and get the hell out of the stadium.
Well, do you know why I think that coaches in baseball and professional football really depend on analytics? My theory is this. They want to cover their ass. They want to say, I did what everyone said I should do, rather than doing what I know I would have done or, otherwise would have been the right decision. Joe Girardi on the New York Yankees was a perfect example of that. You got somebody out of the bullpen who's striking everybody out, throwing 99 miles an hour, and he takes him out because the hitter he's facing historically has batted 360 off of him. Well, that's not the way probabilities work. Every event is independent in and of itself. Yep. So I think what they're doing with analytics is covering their asses and saying, I'm not going to get fired because you guys told me to do this, and therefore I did it.
Yeah.
And I'm good.
It's funny because obviously now we rely on analytics more, but you look at Joe Girardi, and not to get too off topic, we still have some good content going ahead with the Rutgers channel here. But when you look at Joe Girardi, he manages the Phillies, and they're like 8 games under 500, and he gets tossed the can, and then they bring in Rob Thompson, who's more instinctive, and then they make the World Series. So it's not always about analytics. You're right. But unfortunately, when it comes to this draft, you have to pass the analytics to get drafted. And then after that, heart over height or, heart over skills, whatever you may be. That's where it kind of determines the placement. But in order to get drafted, you do have to pass the analytics.
No, I agree with you. And I think analytics has its place. I don't think we should throw the baby out with the bathwater, but I think it's become disproportionately influential. And certainly we don't want to get off topic, but I suspect some of you Rutgers fans out there are also Yankees or Mets fans. So once in a while, if we talk about that, I suspect we're talking about stuff that interests you. Now, okay, so let me make one last analogy. If you've ever seen Rocky IV, you had Drago. Drago was off the charts on the analytics, but Rocky beat him. And that, in a nutshell, is my point.